Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. In today's episode, going to continue our conversation with Scott and Adam from the WalkOff Podcast, talking all kinds of things Toronto Blue Jays. Also, happy Alek Manoah Day to those of you who celebrate, as the big fella is on the mound. So we'll start by getting you set for tonight's Alek Manoah-Zach Greinke matchup.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Craig Ballard. I am Locked On Blue Jays. I am thankful that you're spending part of your day talking Blue Jay baseball with me. If you're taking this in on YouTube, please do the old like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, please, and thank you. And if the Locked On Blue Jay podcast is becoming part of your daily podcast routines, I certainly thank you for that as well. In today's episode, segments 2 and 3, going to continue our conversation with Scott and Adam from the WalkOff Podcast, talking a lot of different things Toronto Blue Jay related. First, of course, do want to get you set for tonight's tilt as the Blue Jays continue this 4-game series at Kansas City. The big fella, Alek Manoah, back on the mound, making his second start of the season. He's up against Zach Greinke. Now, for Manoah, very true to say that he struggled in his first outing, right? Now, schedule-wise and the way, days off and things have worked out, there's a lot of opening day starters. You would think aces, right? But at the very least, opening day starters having their second start of the season today, and many are like Alek Manoah. He's in actually good company. There was a lot of struggles that opening day. Jacob deGrom is going today. He struggled in his opening day on opening day. Aaron Nola. We know Miles Michaelis. The Jays got to him. Corey Kluber, Logan Webb, Hunter Green. Heck, even Corbin Burns was touched up on opening day. So Alek Manoah, not in the minority when it comes to really good starting pitchers looking to right the ship after a slow start in the opener. Now, the good news is this team and this ballpark could very well provide the cure for what ails Alek Manoah. Now, first of all, traditionally, I know he's just getting his career started, but we often see when Alek Manoah's had a bad start, a start that's nowhere close to being indicative of his potential, he's bounced back pretty much every single time. So I am looking for a bounce back game. And again, this team and this mound, this ballpark, could be good news for Alek Manoah. He's faced Kansas City 3 times in his career, won all 3 games. Alek Manoah has pitched 20 career innings against the Kansas City Royals, has allowed 1 run. That's going to work, right? And it wasn't even on a home run. So no Royals ever homered off of Alek Manoah. We know he was good on the road last season as well. In this ballpark, in this very ballpark, Kauffman Stadium last season against these Royals, Alek Manoah threw 6 innings of shutout baseball. Now, the only Royals who have had success, Kyle Isbell and Franmil Reyes, they combined for 4 for 5 career against Alek Manoah, but the rest of this current Kansas City team that has faced Manoah in the past, they're combined 6 for 41. That's a 146 batting average. And as we say, no Royals ever homered against Alek Manoah. Now, one thing to keep an eye on, we know how good Manoah is against righties. He's still good against lefties, but he's so dominant against righties now. It is worth mentioning, we've seen these first couple of games here that Kansas City has a lot of left-handed bats, right? So that part may be a challenge for Alek Manoah facing a lot of lefties today. But again, this is an opponent. This is a ballpark. This is a scenario where I think the glass half full crew should be really excited about Alek Manoah's start tonight. Now, on the other side of the coin, we have veteran Zach Greinke. Would you believe? Now, here's Alek Manoah just getting his career started. Well, Zach Greinke, this is 20th season on the big league level. Holy moly. It's his second go-around with the Kansas City Royals. Just 2 decades of Major League Baseball, and he's not really slowing down, not really losing steps. His ERA was in the low 3s last season. His season opener this season, his team lost. The Royals lost 2-0 to the Twins, but Greinke did go into the 6th, pitched pretty well. Now, April is traditionally a very good month for Zach Greinke, so sort of a glass half empty there from the Blue Jays, and they'll need to be careful. They'll need a good game from Manoah today because Zach Greinke in his career, 197 and 47. I'm going to say that again. 197 and 47 when his team scores at least 3 runs for him. And 3 is not even a huge number, right? But when Zach Greinke traditionally, again, season 20, in the past, when he's gotten run support, my gosh, even a bit of run support, his teams have won those games. His fastball, his changeup, and the slider for Greinke all got hit last season. What did we see in his season debut? Because he seems to have noticed that, and like the veteran he is, he's making adjustments. We hardly saw any fastballs from Greinke in that season debut. Tough look for the Blue Jays, who want to feast on fastballs. That curveball is what led the day for Greinke, his curve in that season opener. So for the Blue Jays, have to go up mindful of that curveball tonight, looking for that curveball, and in particular, ready to pounce on a curveball that's a mistake, right? One that's just spinning there, ready to be dealt with. Blue Jays need to be ready to deal with that pitch tonight. Now, traditionally, Zach Greinke does dominate the bottom half, the bottom third of any lineup. Now, over the course of his career against the Blue Jays, just 5-5 with a 4.08 ERA. That's the glass half empty. That's the glass half full, I beg your pardon, but the glass half empty. This will be Greinke's 108th start at Kauffman Field. Holy moly, 108th start. His career ERA at Kauffman, 3.34. So again, Blue Jays going to have their work cut out for them. Now, that's some glass half empty stuff. There is glass half full stuff when it comes to the Blue Jays versus Zach Greinke. Again, that 5-5 record, that's nothing to write home about. 4.08 ERA career against the Jays. That's good. It's not great. It's not poor. That's decent, right? But there are a bunch of hitters. And we mentioned how well Greinke does against the bottom of the lineup. Well, Whit Merrifield has hit Zach Greinke in his career. Kevin Kiermaier. Now, Kiermaier's just 1 for 2, but it was a home run. But there's a lot of different Blue Jay players here to be excited about. You look at Brandon Belt, who needs to get going, right? He's hit very well in his career against Greinke. So is Bo, as we mentioned, Witt. So is Matt Chapman, who's off to a good start, and so is George Springer. Those 5 batters, and that's all throughout the Blue Jay lineup, right? Those guys we just mentioned there. Those 5 are combined to be hitting 351 in their careers against Zach Greinke. 5 doubles, 5 home runs. These things are going to work. Yeah, I mean, these things are going to work. So a lot of glass half full optimism for this game tonight for the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, before we reconvene with Scott and Adam from the WalkOff Podcast, I do want to mention, of course, MLB is here. The NBA playoffs almost here. So now's the perfect time to download FanDuel. That is America's #1 sports book. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel app. It's safe, it's secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers to three-pointers drained, you name it. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine bets for a chance at an even bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance for your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Now, Adam Mack and Scott Belfort from the WalkOff Podcast joining us here on Locked On Blue Jays. Gentlemen, and we'll start with Scott here. When you look at the landscape of the American League East, you'd mentioned earlier Tampa Bay. My standard line, and I did see it last year, but my standard line is I will believe the Toronto Blue Jays every season. I will believe the Blue Jays finish ahead of the Tampa Bay Rays when I see it. And it's been complete domination of the Rays over the Blue Jays. The first 5 seasons Tampa was in existence, the Blue Jays won the season series all 5 times. In the 20 years since, 2 decades since, the Jays have won 4 series against the Tampa Bay Rays. In the last 15 years, it's happened twice. It's complete domination. Now, this new balanced schedule takes 6 games off of that Tampa battle every year, right? So I do like that. I do like that. And Scott was talking earlier about how Tampa's just not anybody's radar. Last year, I can't remember who they were, but it was Ryu, it was Phelps. There was 4 pitchers at one time that went on the DL for the Toronto Blue Jays, and all heck broke loose. During that time, the Tampa Rays had 13 pitchers on their disabled list. I mean, are you absolutely kidding me right now? The employee of the month from Best Buy was getting brought in and was lights out for Tampa. Like, they're just a pitching factory. I'm very concerned about the Tampa Bay Rays. This Yankee lineup, the bottom of this Yankee lineup seems deplorable to me. They're dealing with a lot of injuries. I prefer the days, gentlemen, I think it's downright rude of the Baltimore Orioles to trying to get back in this race right now. I prefer the days when the Baltimore Orioles were just a doormat and the Blue Jays were like 14-5 against them every year. I think it's absolutely rude that they're trying to get back in things right now. I do think Baltimore makes noise next year. I don't know if they're as good this year as people think. And the Boston Red Sox, I'm just not concerned about the Boston Red Sox at all. And we are in the glory era of Blue Jays versus Boston Red Sox. The Jays have won 20 of the last 24 games against the Boston Red Sox. It's been complete domination. The last 10 games at Fenway Park, the Blue Jays have lost once. I'm not worried about Boston at all. New York, just because of the top of that lineup, and when their pitching is healthy, sure, they're going to be in the mix. Tampa, I'm very concerned with. Scott, start with you. Where are you in the AL East? Who's concerning you, if anybody?
Tampa Bay
Yeah.
concerns me. They absolutely concern me. I know we kind of touched on it earlier in the episode here, but they were very injured last year. Like you said, just there, 13 pitchers were on the IL when the Blue Jays thought that they were reeling.
Mhm.
They managed to year after year after year have a strong bullpen. I mean, it normally takes everyone till May or June to learn all the names in that bullpen, but every guy they bring up, every guy they find, just they seem to have one pitch that is elite, and then their pitching coach can just teach them how to just lean on that
Mhm.
elite pitch. And you just see it time after time after time. Their starting rotation is healthy this year. And their guys like Springs the other day, right? Like,
Man,
he's a dude who just,
wow.
who saw Jeremy Springs being that guy? Like, he really is stepping up and kind of
Mhm.
looking like the ace of that rotation. Now, I don't think he's a legitimate ace or anything like that. And of course, when you protect your starters like Tampa does and only strut them out there for 2 times through the lineup and only give them 5 innings, it is easier to dominate. But a win's a win. And Tampa Bay, we're going to be saying that a lot this year. Well, they didn't do it pretty, but a win's a win.
Jeez.
And that just seems to be the mantra there. As for the Orioles, I feel very similar to you. I think they are going to make a major step forward. I just don't see it happening until 2024. They're just so young. You look at the guys
Yeah.
like Gunnar Henderson, like they're really relying on Rushman, who's a stud and already blowing minds. And I mean, you hear people talk about he's going to be a Hall of Famer if he just stays healthy. I mean, that's a lot of stuff to put out into the universe, right? As Blue Jays fans, we watched that happen to Nate Pearson, and it makes me nervous just whenever any young player is being put on that sort of pedestal. But he is a stud. But I don't see the Orioles being a threat in this division until 2024. The Red Sox don't concern me, although I actually did predict that they finish ahead of the Orioles this year. I do think the Orioles are going to finish with a worse record than they did last year. I don't think they're going to be a worse team. I just don't believe in their starting pitching, and I don't think that their bullpen's going to replicate what they did last year. Time will tell, though, as you said,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And as for the
exact.
Yankees, go ahead there. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say exact same page. But one thing, Scott, you make it sound like us going into year number 5 of can this be the Nate Pearson year? You make it sound like that's a bad thing. But okay, sure. And, so go ahead. You were going to say about the Yankees?
I was just going to say about the Yankees. The Yankees scare the crap out of me. They're
Wow.
they're the evil empire. It doesn't matter, man. If the pinstripes, injuries, it just doesn't matter, because truly the Yankees have the resources that they're going to stay in it until the
That's
trade
true.
deadline, and
Yeah.
they definitely are going to push their chips in. So I do not write the Yankees off, even with all of these pitching injuries that they're going through right now.
Yeah. Go ahead, Adam.
I miss the old Yankees. Is that weird for me to say? Like, when I was a kid growing up, the Yankees just threw money at free agency, and that's how they kept putting a good product on the field. So for the last handful of years, I've been watching them hand out mega deals to Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge this offseason, Garrett Cole, right? And I've kept telling myself, like, okay, keep spending this money and paint yourselves into a pickle, and it's, you're going to really put those constraints on yourselves at the back end of those contracts. Except now the Yankees keep developing young talent all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And that's just not fair for teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers to be able to like outspend everyone, outbid everyone, and then also bail themselves out of bad contracts with guys like Anthony Volpe or Oswald Peraza. Like, that's what's frustrating to me. I'm looking at the Yankees team here, their rotation decimated with injuries. And yet, who's the rookie they had pitched in the other day? Johnny Brito, like 6 shutout innings out of nowhere.
Yeah,
like, it's just not fair that the Yankees can just keep.
Clark
with
Schmidt,
one healthy starting pitcher, they should be in for trouble in April, and I feel like they're going to be 10 games above 500 by the end of this month. So it's frustrating.
You guys are making a lot of great points on the Yankees. I'm remembering, and Scott referring to the resources, so they'll always be in it. I remember one year, I wish I could remember the season, and I wish I could remember the 4 as well. There were 4 Yankees. One was Randy Johnson, Kevin Brown, I think it was Jamie Wright, and who was that veteran lefty? Was it Stanton? There was a veteran. Anyway, they had 4 pitchers that did not throw one pitch for them that season, but those 4 pitchers combined to make more than the entire Blue Jay 40-man roster. So the entire team that the Blue Jays were looking to field to be competitive, the Yankees were paying 4 guys, because you're exactly right, Scott. That is and Adam as well. That is the big deal with the Yankees money, is it's not just bringing in these guys, it's moving on easily from these guys. You remember, as Blue Jay fans, how many times when Vernon Wells was struggling, he was in the lineup every single day. Because Delgado and Vernon, they were taking up 40% of the Jays payroll. No matter how they were struggling, they were in the lineup every day, because come hell or high water, the Blue Jays needed to get production from these guys. Alex Rios was that case after his extension as well. Really struggled, but come hell or high water, they're there in that lineup. So I definitely hear what you guys are saying on that.
And Adam really nailed it too when he talked about the development system in the Yankees and the young players that they're turning out, because that really increases their resources when it comes to trades as well. I mean, and we've watched that happen last trade deadline. They went out and got Frankie Montas. Whether that was a good trade or not for them, it's irrelevant, because he was the big sought after starting pitcher on the free agent market, or on the trade market, and they had the resources to bring him in. They had the prospect capital to attract that other organization. And I mean, the A's are a joke, but you know, if it wasn't the A's, there's lots of organizations that they can do deals with that like what they see in that Yankee farm system.
Well, Scott Effross. Scott, let's talk Scott Effross, right, as well. From the Cubs reliever, same thing at the deadline. The Cubs were smelling what the Yankees were cooking in that minor league system. And Adam, last thing I'll say on the Yankees as well, because you bring up the points about the development, which is downright rude of these guys right now to be doing. But here's the thing, Adam, it's all these guys seem like enjoyable players too. Like, what the heck, man? They need to have an attitude so we can just hate them right out the gate, right? These guys seem enjoyable.
Even Aaron Judge is like the most likable Yankee I've ever seen in my life. That makes me
ridiculous.
Gag on my own spit.
Josh Donaldson is still there, so I can still get my hate on. I can still get my blood boiling a little bit there. That's fine, but okay. More with Scott and Adam from the Walk-Off in just a moment. But first, I do want to talk to you about Pro Baseball GM. This is one of the coolest games I've played in a long time. I always thought I could be a great Major League GM. As it turns out, not all that easy. I probably should have known, but right? Okay. Now, if you've had the same thought and to fantasize about managing your own franchise, go and download Pro Baseball GM immediately. The game allows you to manage every strategic aspect of your franchise. You'll play through seasons. You lead your franchise and fans to glory as you build a historic dynasty. In the simulation, you're responsible for hiring the right coaches and staff, managing team finances, scouting and drafting players, manage through difficult personalities and injuries, and you navigate your franchise through free agency and all the ups and downs of a season. All of this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline to play as you go, as you want, when you want. Locked On Blue Jays listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store, so make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up in the App Store. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. So Scott and Adam run the Walk-Off Podcast. Again, I think many of you will be familiar with them now. Every Sunday night from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, they run a version of their podcast called The Long Toss, and it's live on their YouTube channel. I've had the pleasure of being on many times. Hope to be on again at some point soon. They have a lot of great guests on every single week. Now, each week, on the Long Toss, it's the two of them plus up to 4 people, but usually I see it at about 2 or 3 people. So let's stick to the 3 people here. So let's throw this out here. I'll start with mine. What would be the dream cast for you, dream 3 people for you guys to bring in for a Long Toss? And I'll start with mine. I'm going to start with Pat Henkin, because I don't know if you guys have had the pleasure of speaking, but what Pat Henkin just waxes poetically on baseball. I could talk. I've got nothing but time for Pat Henkin. If no matter how much time he wanted to talk Blue Jay baseball or just baseball, I think he's awesome, and he gives really, really fun, well thought out answers. I'll say Mark DeRosa, who I really like as well on the MLB Network. He would have some interesting stories about managing Team USA, but really just to hear him talking about, because he sort of got the whole Munenari Kawasaki craze started. Right? He was a former Blue Jay, right, who loved his time in Toronto, so I would love to see that. And the third guest, I'm going to say Ross Stripling. I don't know if Ross Stripling, when he's on podcasts, I've had the pleasure of being a guest on a few podcasts and getting to ask him questions over the last couple of years. It's not even questions he knows. He's not prepared for them, and he just waxes poetically. He gives such thoughtful answers. I'm so impressed with those guys. Originally, I thought Jeff Passan because just of his knowledge, but I couldn't get away. Henkin would be so good. Stripling would be so good. I think DeRosa would be so good. That's me. Scott Belfort, how about you? Dream 3 on and you can't use me as one of them.
Well,
Sorry.
to
Okay.
start with, I love your Dream 3. I know we were very, very lucky to have Pat Henkin on the podcast about a year and a half ago. And my goodness, I mean,
Wasn't he good?
how generous he was with his time was awesome. But also, like, just 45 minutes of baseball knowledge being just thrown out, and the experiences he went through. And I know his winning the Cy Young story was just phenomenal. So for those of you watching, quick plug here, obviously type in WalkOff and Pat Henkin in YouTube, and that'll come right up there, and that's a great interview to check out. My Dream 3 is going to go, and we were lucky enough to have this guy on the podcast, but John Gibbons. I just love the way he talks baseball. He's such an interesting character. He's so folksy and fun to chat with. So we'd love to have him back and a part of the long toss. It would be great. I am such a huge fan of that 1998 Blue Jays team. If we could ever get Carlos Delgado, I mean, that would just be an incredible piece to have, just to hear the man talk baseball and, hear from his experiences. And for the third one, you know what? I'm going to go with a prospect. I'd love to have Ricky Tiedemann on the show. It would be so cool to have him a part of the long toss, and just to hear his experience coming up the minor league system, and his experience being drafted out of high school, and all of that would be a very, very cool long toss, I think.
Fantastic.
Great question, by the way, Craig.
Well, great answer. Great answer. I don't know what it is about Ricky T, but it feels like he brings the party with him. Like he would be a great guest, right? He would be a great guest. Adam Mack, what says you, sir?
Well, if I can't have myself, Scott, and 3 Craig Ballards, then
and you can't.
My next dream team would be I like when we're not all getting along. I think is my favorite moments on these group discussions. Nothing wrong with 5 of us all high-fiving each other and patting each other on the backs, but a little civilized disagreement is always enjoyable. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this person's name anymore, if this is persona non grata.
So it's Roberto Alomar.
It's not Roberto Alomar.
Okay.
It's Greg's on.
Oh, what's it called? The Manalist. Okay.
The
Manalist. Yeah. Just because he is so strongly opinionated.
Polarizing.
That's such a good
very
call.
polarizing.
He's the only one in the media that would call out the Jays when he thought they were worthy of being called out. That's a great. Okay. You've started hot, Adam.
Okay, so to that list, I would add. I don't know who would play well off of him. It would have to be someone really smart. Maybe if we threw a Jeff Passan, you brought his name up into the panel. I could see those two playing off each other really well. So let's put Jeff Passan on the panel, and then I think for a third. One of the prospects that we've interviewed who has charisma oozing out his pores is Hagen Danner. Yeah. Every time we talk to him, he is, talk about Ricky Tiedemann bringing the fun with him. Hagen Danner is the funnest hang of anyone we've had the pleasure of talking to. Very knowledgeable, very cool backstory. He's a converted catcher into a pitcher, throws 100 now.
That's going to work.
He's got so much charm and charisma. I can't get enough of the kid. So
yeah,
fantastic. Adam, you know what? You're just segueing us right into the one of the final topics I wanted to get to with you guys is of all the, because that's one of my favorite things, guys. I'll just tell you, listening at home here or watching on YouTube, one of my favorite things about the WalkOff podcast is it's not just Scott and Adam, who you can see bring the knowledge with them. You can see bring the passion and energy with them, but the guests they have are outstanding. Anyone and whoever your favorite Blue Jay media person is, been on the show and will be on the show again. Danny Jansen is becoming almost a regular. Calvin Escobar, if you're an old school Blue Jay fan, was on the other day. But the prospects that these guys have, there's so many prospects that these guys get to come on the show. So we'll start with you, Adam, because you can't use the answer of Danner because you just said it there. But I wanted to know from both of you guys, and we'll give honorable mention to Hagen Danner, sure, but who was a prospect that you interviewed on the WalkOff podcast and you walked away thinking, you know what, that person doesn't even know it, but they just earned a huge fan. That interview, that guy was brilliant. That was awesome. Who's somebody like that for you, Adam?
I'll go first. For me, it's hands down Adam Kloffenstein.
Okay, King Clough.
Yeah, he when we ended our interview with him, he just so knowledgeable and the head on his shoulders. Like, I think we interviewed him when he was 20, and this was just coming off the COVID season. He was pitching in that Roger Clemens league, and
no filter either.
No filter, but like mature beyond his years, other than the casual conversation. But he knows baseball inside and out. He has a skill set to match. He's a few years away from the major leagues. Doesn't have the hype on him that a Ricky Tiedemann has, but 3-4 years from now, he could be a starter for these Blue Jays too.
That is really high praise, Adam, because as I say, I'm very honest. I'm so impressed with the amount of guys, prospects you guys have on. And Adam, you preface it by saying, not only is this my answer, this is by far my answer. So that's high praise for King Clough. How about the Belf? What says Scott? Somebody that he walked away saying, oh my gosh, okay, this person just earned a new fan.
So, we are actually releasing this interview on Thursday, but
Beautiful.
we sat down about a month ago with Naswell Paulino. Now he's going to be playing for the Dunedin Blue Jays, 21-year-old. They picked him up in the international free agency. So they signed him. What really impressed me about this kid is that Spanish is his first language, and he sat down with us with his translator, which is the first time that I've ever done an interview with a translator like that. And it blew me away how fearless he was to answer the questions we have in a language that was so foreign to him. So he did most of the interview in Spanish, and then it was translated. But there were lots of times where when he was confident enough to answer it in English, he would take that chance and he would do it. He's a young pitcher that's moving up the ranks right now, and I think the fearlessness to do the interview is what stood out to me, and I just know in my heart that translates onto the field. And so Naswell Paulino, I'm also there are so many amazing guys that we have talked to, and I hate to just pick one. And part of the reason I did pick Naswell is I'm giving a little plug here to our release on Thursday of them. But honestly, again, it did stand out to me. And it was very cool to interview, to be put in a position where Adam and I were challenged, right? Because we've never interviewed someone with a translator who was like that. So yeah, very cool. Naswell Paulino is who I'll go with.
Sounds like the call to action for Blue Jay fans on Thursday. Once they've taken in the Locked On podcast, they head right over to the WalkOff and check out that interview. Okay. That'll wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for spending part of your day talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball with me. On tomorrow's Locked On Blue Jays podcast, a little bit more from Scott and Adam from the WalkOff podcast, and we're also going to get you set for the pitching matchup tomorrow night, Alek Manoah versus Zach Greinke.